VenomousStare back with more StarCraft 2 action. This time we have a best of 3 between two guys that played with each other on the 2v2 ladder, got matched up with each other randomly, and decided to hash out their differences in a best of 3. The player in the bottom left is our protagonist, Out Now Savagewood, playing Terran, and his opponent, King Kaisu, playing Zerg. Now this map is very good for Terran. This is Lost Temple. This is a map that was featured in all of the major tournaments in the early days of StarCraft 2, GSL, IPL, MLG, you get the point. The most obvious and defining factor of this map is this high ground here overlooking the natural. Now this is relevant because in Zerg versus Terran, Zerg players would frequently be harassed with drops on the cliff. Most frequently those would be tank drops or Thor drops, as you see Hatchery first coming out here for King Kaisu. And that is interesting to note because back in that time the Roach was awful, it had less range, and in general it was not a very good unit at all because it could not morph into the Ravager. And a lot of the Roach's utility is completely lost whenever the Ravager does not exist. Furthermore, the Queen was way worse. Extremely short anti-air range, extremely short anti-ground range. I mean, the anti-ground range for the Queen was a joke. It was 3, which is nothing. So, that really did not allow Zerg to have many options. Dropper Lord tech was hidden behind lair, and it was 200-200, and Overlord speed was 100-100. So it was pretty much impossible to tech up into lair and then get both of those expensive gas-heavy upgrades before the drops would hit. Or if you did get it before they hit, you really wouldn't have enough money to defend. But, in Legacy of the Void, the Ravager exists, and very interestingly, occasionally if I ever want to 1v1 someone and they're a Zerg player, yeah, I'll throw it on Lost Temple because I really want to see how well does the Ravager defend against cliff play. Now the funny thing is you have people like this guy who will sort of realize like Lost Temple, like isn't that a Terran map? But they don't realize why it's a Terran map or how they should adjust their build. And this map really is all about the cliff. Now in the early days of StarCraft 2, when the map first came out, you could spawn in any position to any position. For instance, these positions are very Terran favored. This is what you call close by ground positions. And if we look at the rush distance from natural to natural, it's about a screen apart, which is very short, as we can see the entrances to both of the naturals on one screen. Savagewood is going to run around here and try to find the base of the Zerg, and maybe an Overlord if he's lucky. Now it's interesting to note that whenever they disabled close by ground spawn positions, you could still spawn in these positions relative to the Terran cross or close by air. Close by air was still good for Terran because they could, I mean, you see how short the air rush distance is for things like Banshees and quick drops. But more importantly, a lot of Terran players would sort of do these pushes across the short rush distance, and then they could oftentimes siege stuff up at the bottom of this ramp and really make it hard for Zerg. A lot of the early day maps like Metalopolis and Lost Temple had these really wide, big main bases, but one of the key features you see is this plateau right here that sort of extends way out, and then the ramp sort of goes inside, points inwardly into the natural. As we see, a few lings come out here, speedlings are out, and if Savagewood was attempting an expansion here, then things could get a little rough for him, but he's not. He's going with a very aggressive one base build, looks like a tank drop. And whenever you would see people do cliff play, it was often this, tanks on the high ground, or Thors on the high ground. Thors would just decimate queens, and that was pretty much the only thing Zerg would try to make to defend back in 2010 and 2011, so that's why the Thor was so strong. But you don't have to wait for armory for tank drop, and we can see how absolutely late the Roach Horn was. The Zerg's floating a lot of money. Roach Horn should have been made way earlier, and they didn't even have a chance to make a Rose before the natural does. In the same way that a Ravager can be used used now to deal with tank drop play on cliffs. Sort of interestingly, Liberators can be used to help facilitate these pushes, as Savagewood is going to use his Liberator to spot this high ground. King Kaisu did get Overlord speed, so he will be able to peek around the map and see what's going on with his OVs. But he has already lost his natural, so things are going exactly as Savagewood has planned. A Spire is going to be put down here for King Kaisu, and Savagewood starts his natural expansion. Now, one of the things that we would see back in this time was Terran players would frequently sort of go for these extremely potent, aggressive one-base builds. And oftentimes, we would see these one-base builds used to deal extreme damage to the Zerg, as Savagewood is going to throw in his reserves here. But what would really happen was that it was not uncommon for the Terran to do aggressive builds like this, as there's no chance in hell those roaches are getting out alive. Out of the natural, rather, you know, not just back into the main, but you know, the point that I'm trying to make is this sort of play was not uncommon, where you would see one base aggression, a lot of damage dealt, and then afterwards you get the expansion. A lot of the Terran play that we see now is predicated on getting a fast expansion, going toe-to-toe with the Zerg expansion-wise, meaning that, you know, you go for Hellions and then get a quick expo, you go Reaper expand into Hellion expansion, things like this. Savagewood is pressing forward. He has these tanks on this low ground bridge. Whenever you can put tanks on a low ground like this, it's good because if your opponent's going for lings, they can't just surround them. Marines are going to press up here and try to clear creep tumors, because off creep, this is going to be much harder to break. Savagewood still has these two tanks up here because if the Zerg player does elect to swarm everything down low, it will be nearly impossible to clean it up with these two tanks up here because everything will just be shelled from the high ground. Savagewood's expansion is up, he's continuing to reinforce across the short rush distance, and he's going to commit heavily to this play by throwing up multiple bunkers. And this is what I'm talking about. Mutas are going to be cut to ribbons, all one of them, because whenever you're on one base, you really can't afford to go to two different units that cause gas. In this case, roaches and mutas. And notice here that the Zerg player, because he's been limited to one base, is having a hard time spending his money. Even though it feels wrong, you should probably just go ahead and make another hatch for the larva. Intelligently, he has tried to spend his money by making a lot of extra queens. As you see, he does make his next hatchery. And he has in fact gone for a little bit of drop play. He's going to drop drones off onto the island base and expand. Now, a Terran player really won't expect Zerg to ever take the island, so it will rarely be scouted. A building bunker does go down here, but Savagewood has 3 bunkers with his tanks, and he moved one of the tanks from the cliffs down to the low ground. And putting this tank here is a little bit more risky because the Zerg player will be able to run up here and bile it. The reason the tanks down here is so good is the Ravagers can't get in range without taking damage, really. Expansion has been started out on the island, and it looks like the Zerg player might try to expand over here as well. Now, it's going to be nearly impossible to take this island because he would have to sort of hide it all the way up around and then bring it back down. But this bottom right island is not going to be scouted pretty much ever. And if you have the queens, you might as well keep trying to spread the creep out, and it's very smart for the Zerg player to keep trying to spread creep, because trying to break this stuff off of creep is nearly impossible. Savagewood did try to micro that tank back, but it does get biled down. And Savagewood is alive and kicking economy-wise. He's starting to pull ahead, not just in tempo of the game, but in terms of economy. Now, whenever you do scans like this and it's going to be contested, you want to snipe the active tumors, and of course those are the tumors that still have color on them, they're not just gray. If you've pretty much never played Zerg, the queen lays a tumor down, and once it's laid down it can be expanded. Once it's expanded once, the original tumor becomes inactive and the next one becomes active. And a lot of Queen Ravager is going to come out here. Savagewood stems, and a little bit of corrosive bile gets thrown down, but not really enough. And Savagewood does start to repair this bunker and put a Liberator up here as well. The Zerg player has taken a third base, which is nice, but it's going to be hard to get the right amount of workers at those bases. He has so much pressure on him in his main base, and at this point he's starting to run out of money, and he's not really floating money anymore as an infestation pit comes down. Another tank coming out for Savage Wood. And the fact that he has so many bunkers down on this low ground makes this so hard to break, because as you see more biles coming down here, doing damage to the tanks, killing a few units. It's very frustrating for the Zerg because even if he breaks this little top half, there's still so much on the low ground. Savage Wood can always sort of medevac up back onto the cliff if he really wanted to. And Savage Wood at this point is going to move his siege tanks up from the low ground and start to really suffocate the Terran. This one SCV is a true hero. He has been repairing a plethora of things. Now, this Liberator is pretty vulnerable to this happening and being corrosive biled down. Whenever your opponent has this many Ravagers, you just want to be more conservative with the Liberator because the tanks are really your breadwinners here. And whenever your opponent is still in a game that seems like it's 100% lost, you should never assume that they're being spiteful or they're stupid. You should assume that they're hiding a base somewhere or hiding tech somewhere. So Savage Wood is going to queue up some shift A moves and look around the map, and he's also going to take this tower. Now taking this tower will allow him to see these roaches coming out, and because the roaches came from this direction, he can deduce that there's a base there. He's not going to be able to kill this Overlord because Overlord speed has been researched, and King Kaisu is scouting around and saying, well shit, he's not still on one base, in fact he has a decent economy. And this is part of why close positions is so brutal. The Terran player can just take this gold base, basically sit on your chest, make this a PF, and as you're in a very, very tough position, the Terran is that close to you. Savage Wood loads everything up, and everything, I mean Marines, up into a medevac, and he's going to cut the space down. And at this point, the Zerg's days are numbered, even though the island base has not been scouted. And mercifully, a turret is going to come down here for Savage Wood, who did delay his eBay for quite a long time. As whenever you're doing a very aggressive one-base tech build, it can be hard to squeeze in upgrades. But this turret is so good, not because it's going to shoot anything from the air, but because it's going to give Savage Wood vision of creep tumors, so he doesn't have to keep wasting scans. This SCV again worth its weight in gold. Again, we see creep tumors being cleared, and Savage Wood is within range of the Bane Nest. And he's going to just be aggressive on the units when they come up to fight him, and now he's going to empty his bunkers and attack with all the Marines, as this base did die. And the Zerg player very annoyed as he gets Manor Mule. He really wanted to win this game, and this little drop play over here was cute, but he has been way behind for the majority of the game, and he didn't make Ravagers, which is really what he needed to hold that initial push. Savage Wood, who knows the game has been over for about the last 5 minutes, is going to drop another Manor Mule. And finally, King Kaisu reaches out. He says, okay, I'll make an excuse about the map. So that means that Savage Wood is going to pick a ladder map. And then one of the most annoying things in StarCraft 2 history, we're probably going to have to relog back in. Look at this garbage. Well, it's an old replay, so you can't stay logged in for whatever reason. So the second match is going to be on King's Cove, which is the most Zerg favored map in the entire pool. And it's interesting to note that the Terran player went for an aggressive build in game 1, but the Zerg player went ahead and opted for quick overload speed. And it looks like we're going to see a proxy here from Savage Wood. And the quick overlord speed obviously means that you want to scout. You want to be really keeping an eye out on your opponent. So the Zerg player really likes to scout, as we're going to see in this game. He doesn't send his first overlord cross map. He just lets it wait, sort of in his natural, as though he's worried about a Protoss cannon rush. And these two proxy barracks going to spell trouble for the Zerg if the Zerg doesn't scout them. As we can see, another hatchery first play coming in for Kinkasu. And now he's going to use this Overlord to scout around for cheese. And the one SCV is a dead giveaway there, and he scouts the proxy. So this is either Proxy Rax Reaper, which fell out of style a long time ago, or it's 2 Rax, which has been really good since 2010, and it's 2 Rax. So Savagewood here is going to set up. Did the sound get turned off again? It's so stupid. Savagewood here is going to set up shop at the bottom here of the natural, build the bunker, and then go for a very ambitious bunker on the high ground. Now it is pretty easy for Zerg to defend this bunker on the high ground, and the Zerg player will do just that. Savagewood did try to get away, but double spine and roach horn coming. Savagewood will have to cancel that. But with the Zerg player building 2 spines here, he should, well, one of them goes down. But spines are very good against 2 racks, assuming that you're not fighting against infinitely repaired bunkers. So Savagewood will try to keep the spores from, or the spines rather, from coming up. But since one was made in the middle one, it's going to be very difficult to do that. Another spine being built. And Savagewood pulls the boys here. A very questionable decision considering a spine is already up. But Savagewood, he's going to go for it. A little bit of sloppy micro here as you want everything to hit at the same time. You don't want to be shitty and disjointed like this. And with the spine crawler up, the Zerg player will probably be able to hold, because there are not a whole lot of Marines out here. And the Zerg player is just about to have some wings pop. Savagewood gets the queen, but another spine finishes, and Savagewood's pretty much out of workers at this point, as he was pretty much on the razor's edge of breaking the Zerg, but it didn't quite happen. Now, the best he can hope for is to kill this natural, and very vexingly for Savagewood, that bunker dies. And whenever you play Zerg, it feels like that bunker never ever dies. So Savagewood is going to try to clear up the natural, even though he is almost too far behind to win. 2 spines, of course, are going to decimate this bunker. And at this point, the Terran is pretty boned. So we're going to kick it up to ×2 here. Really the things that you want to look out for here are trying to keep the Zerg on one base, limit his ability to run things out of his main. He says Libby in, right? I guess it means like, oh, there's a Liberator coming, right? I don't know how you can see all those SCVs die after 2 racks. I think that it's if the Terran has already teched up the starboard. But the Zerg is going to try to spread his creep. This is another thing you need to try to limit. Good Zerg players will sort of hide the tumors out on the corners, and before you know it, the whole match is covered. Savagewood lets a few of these lings get by, which is problematic, because he doesn't have anything at all that's going to build an oh shit barracks. And Savagewood wants to click a few Marines out of his control group and try to defend this, but there are too many lings out here for that to even work, honestly. The Zerg does have a hidden base and a nearly insurmountable advantage, although he has been making a lot of attacking units, not a lot of drones. You really don't need that many attacking units with double spine. Savagewood has his stuff on patrol here, and King Kaisu has so many roaches mixed with spines that he can really just run down here, plant both spines, and hit Savagewood in the mouth with his roaches. And he's going to come in for a ling flank here. Savagewood does his best to kite, but whenever they have about as many roaches as you have Marines, you're pretty fucked. So the roaches clean up the Marines, and at this point, Savagewood is just desperately trying to tech up into tank. He's so far behind, he throws a bunker down to boot. But this proxy hatch is going to make the roach attack hit way sooner than Savagewood is ready for. And devastatingly, the bunker is not going to be able to finish. The rest of the roaches show up as a marauder and a tank pop, but it just doesn't matter. Zerg is too far ahead. And Savagewood types out with a little happy face and a GG. And we will move on to our final game right after I relog in for no reason. This song, Relaxation Music DJ Motive with a Korean title, was a favorite of Stephen Destiny Bonnell back when he streamed StarCraft in 2010 and 2011. But Stephen Bonnell II, or Destiny as he was known, was really into music. He one semester, I think, of college that he did, he was a music major, from what I recall. He played piano. And a lot of times Destiny would become engrossed in certain songs and just listen to them over and over. There was this one and then a French opera, I think it was, that he really liked. But regardless, we're going into the final game here. So Savagewood has shown back-to-back aggressive builds, and again he picks a current ladder map, not a fun old school map. So King Kaisu here gets to play on a map that he likes, and let's see what build he goes for. Now I'm really going to bring the point home, because whenever you play someone in a best of 3, and they sort of show off aggressive tendencies, your opponent a lot of times will react to those tendencies in subsequent games and alter their build. So on the first 2 matches we saw hatchery first from King Kaisu, but now we are seeing Speedling expand, which is a very, very safe build. And these overlords are looking around neurotically for proxies. If you scout here, here, and here like the Zerg has done, you're not going to be caught off guard by a proxy. Where are you going to put it up here? Look how far that walk is. Oftentimes Terran proxies are going to just be at the 3rd base. Certain players, if you are having trouble finding 2 racks proxies, they're almost always going to be at your 3rd. And look at this. Lings are running around on shift commands, and after no proxies are found, King Kaisu types GL. He's like, okay, he's certainly not proxying me. So Savagewood, knowing that King Kaisu is wary of a cheese, looks like he's going to play a straight up standard macro game. Reaper expand coming out here. Notice the CC is on the high ground, not on the low ground. Now this is extremely noteworthy, not in every game, but when you consider the context of this best of 3. Savagewood has shown 2 back-to-back very aggressive builds, and to do a hard wall-in early like this means that if these 2 Lings, for instance, after they had checked around for even more proxies, after the Overlords did, if the Lings had run up and tried to scout, always walled in, they wouldn't have seen the CC. For all they know, it could be 6 racks, or 3 racks all in, some sort of 2-factory all in. They don't have any clue. So that's something, if you're a cheesy aggressive player, I'm not saying that's what I am, but in this best of 3, I've certainly been very aggressive. But with cheesy and aggressive play, it's very important to limit information. Now, in general, StarCraft, limiting information is extraordinarily important, but it's even more important when you play aggressively because it makes your standard play much more potent, and that's what we're seeing in this game. So it looks like Savagewood is going for a 2-2-1 fast medevac stim time drop build. This is one of those standard, tried and true builds that really never gets old, sort of like a Hellion opener. And a couple Lings get in because this tree looks like it's walls, but it doesn't. Savagewood fixes his wall, and the Terran player doesn't really give away any unnecessary information, because even if the Zerg ran up and just lost everything in this bunker, you would have seen the expo. So let's just check out the vision of King Kaisu. He's trying to take a 3rd, but remember, whenever you go full first, it puts you behind economy-wise. That means that certain things that you try to do are going to be behind. It means that your 3rd and 4th queen are going to be later. It means that you're going to have less drones. And the only thing that's going to come earlier is Ling speed. Look how bad he fucked up. I just noticed this. Look how bad he fucked up his drone saturation. Holy shit. He has all of his stuff rallied. That's hilarious. I wonder when he's gonna notice this. I remember whenever I was playing 2v2 with my friends, back when I first installed the game in 2012, there was this weird 2v2 we had where I noticed like, well shit, like where's all my money? Like I don't have as much money as I should have, and like I had rallied my drones out to my fucking gas geyser, and I like peeped this replay after I won, but I can't believe that he did this for so long. This is hilarious and perplexing, frankly, because you should notice, not only because it's fucking red text, but because you should be saying to yourself like, where the hell are my drones and my natural? Savagewood does start his drop. He did include a Widowmine and a Reaper, and because this drop was not scouted, King Kaisu does not have any units made. He goes, oh, oops. He does like the big old box pull, and my goodness, I haven't seen Zerg units come out that fast since a Nidus one. I think they were just flooding out of a Nidus. But the fact that scouting was not as good as it should have been is the real reason that this isn't being held, not really the drone thing, because it's not like he saw it was pumping units the whole time and then, oh, I don't have enough money because my macro's fucked up. He was just completely caught off guard. Now, that is just horrific, my god. Now, that's not to say that it wasn't a mistake or it wasn't sloppy or it wasn't stupid or something. It's simply saying that if a Terran shows up in your base and he's doing 2-2-1 and you don't have your units ready, you're going to lose a lot. So Savagewood killed the most important two tech structures, the Pool and the Warren. And notice the follow-up to this drop play is a Viking and another medevac. You want to shift A move command the Viking around to hunt for overlords. And again, the Zerg got overlord speed, so it's not really going to be as effective. But your objective with this one singular Viking, aka the Pult Viking, it's to clear space or clear vision so you can drop. It's not to like kill 6 overlords and put the Zerg way behind. Carapace upgrades have been started, and mercifully the drone saturation is a bit better. Now, one thing that King Kaisu has done well is spread creep in his main base. Shit, he pretty much spent the entire Lost Temple game doing that. But more seriously, you really want to always do this as Zerg. You don't have to do 2 tumors, but you always want to do 1 to connect your natural and main. Depending on the map, a lot of times there's like this much space between the creep. But you don't want to have half of your base be Fog of Ward. You also want to have overlords sort of out here on the corners to scout for drops. Even though this player has elected to get overlord speed, his overlord spread hasn't been particularly good. This is terrible. I noticed when we were playing 2v2, there was a lot of this going on, where he would just make overlords and not rally them anywhere. Hydra Den coming for the Zerg. The Savagewood's macro is alive and kicking. He's added extra barracks. He has tank, tech, and he is working on some nice little marine micro here at the 3rd. Stutter stepping back in between the minerals, and no Bane speed yet here for the Zerg. So that makes it really easy to focus fire the Banes. Savagewood is just ripping apart the Zerg in this macro game. 10 Marines being produced, as well as a couple medevacs and a tank here for Savagewood. And at this point, the Zerg is so far behind. He's just now remaking his Warren as he was trying to go into Hydra here. But you might be asking yourself, well, if I'm making Overlords a Zerg, like, what do you mean they're not just supposed to be my rally point? You make one Overlord and then you right-click it where you want it. And then, even if you're super supply blocked and want to make like 10 Overlords at once, you 4SV right-click, and then 4SV right-click, 4SV right-click, right-click one here, right-click one here. Because Savagewood is really pulling far ahead here. He started a 4th, he's walling his 3rd, and after showing some exceptionally aggressive play, Savagewood is really showing off his ability to macro here. Now, it feels sort of weird because I hadn't really watched this replay thoroughly as 2-2 has started. Unfortunately, it's not synced up because Savagewood didn't have the money for +2. This really sucks as Terran. This is something that is really annoying to deal with. This is like the Terran equivalent of having all of your injects mistimed, reserved, because what happens is one upgrade will finish and Terrans are always used to starting these at the same time, so you'll often fuck up and forget one. And if you don't start 1-1 at the same time, it can sort of cascade to the rest of the game as Savagewood starts to set up liberation zones. And Savagewood is in a very good defensive posture here with his supply depot placement and the fact that he has so much stuff out here being rallied. Huge economy lead. Zerg just now getting his third base back up, very far behind. He really should have just double expanded to try to come back. Savagewood is going to try to go for another double drop. Now it's remarkable how much damage that double drop did in the early game when the Widow Mine did a mixture of nothing and friendly fire. Because whenever you put a Widow Mine on the ramp, your biggest dream is to kill like 15 lings running up and not knowing there's a mine. Now Savagewood's drop is going to be scouted as soon as it gets into the base because of the diligent creep spread of King Kaisu. Notice Savagewood knows how important that is, and he's going to go ahead and deal with that, and then run away. And he fucks up and only boosts one of his medevacs. The last one gets boosted at the end, but it's too late. Nice to see the Pult Viking starting to patrol around and limit the map vision for Zerg. So this is a very nice lesson in drone control with Zerg. If you have like a building gas or you don't want to transfer workers off of your main minerals or whatever mineral patch that you want to transfer from, for instance 14 out of 14 here, this is perfect saturation. Let's just say neither of these are saturated and you didn't want to mess up your saturation on your minerals. You would just hit 4 SDDD to make 3 drones and right click them onto the geyser. And whenever they finish, they'll go into the geyser. That way you're just telling those 3 specific drones, hey, when you're done building, go mine this gas. This, I'm going to rally one of my hatcheries to gas geyser, is inferior. Because you only want to do, the only time you ever, as we see Savagewood makes the Hydras run all the way around and then drops the main. You never want to do this because you see shit like this happen where you're constantly making drones throughout the game and you always want them to go onto your minerals so you can continue to build more queens and spores, spines and drones and Zerg bread and butter. But what ends up happening is this, and what we saw earlier where, oh, I just want to rally these 3 out here. But what happens is you forget, or you just make drones throughout the game and one of your rally points is jacked. So we can see that this player, King Kaisu, clearly does not understand the concept of making units and then telling the eggs to go somewhere. Between the way that he has his drones rallied and between the way that we always see his overlords just go out to the rally point of all his hatcheries, he really doesn't understand how to macro properly in that one specific sense. Savagewood is maxed here, and this army is very scary. The Zerg player is going to try to poke and prod, maybe shave off some money units, but that's just going to be damn near impossible, frankly, because Savagewood, he's just in this position where he has so many well-upgraded money units, 5 tanks, 8 Liberators. The Liberators have range, even though the Zerg can sort of stall his push by coming up and attacking and making him siege, and then once they finally get sieged up, running away, he can't ever really break it. And that's what we see here is, it looks like the Zerg's fighting okay, but then whenever he starts to fight into the money units of Savagewood, he just gets decimated. 1-1 for the tanks and the libs, 2-2 for the marines, and Savagewood did make that aforementioned mistake of, well shit, I forgot to start the 3rd upgrade. But he will have +3 armor soon. And the Liberators are going to attack on the ground as well as Overlords a bit, and Savagewood drops another Manor Mule, as this was the macro game of all macro games, as he is taking a ton of bases across the map, sieging Liberators on both ramps, choking the Zerg out, and he's going to start to spread these tanks out and siege them up, and King Kaisu is forced to concede. So let's just check out what Savagewood had going on at home while this big prolonged push was going on. He was building 2 more bases, an easy 5th coming as well as a 6th or a macro CC. He built a lot of extra barracks, which granted should have been added to the barracks hotkey. And this upgrade should have been started earlier, and this one of these upgrades should have been started as well. The air upgrade is best, but frankly all of them are good in this game considering its heavy Liberator tank with a good amount of medevacs. But yeah, as Ground Zerg, you're never going to be able to fight a Terran army with this much tech unless you have like Lurker Viper, because Roach, Ravager, Hydra just doesn't cut it. So this is a nice little lesson in what to do with your building Zerg eggs, because this guy clearly doesn't understand that whenever you make something you can right click an individual unit or control click the eggs and click around, because his macro throughout the game was real sloppy. I would not be surprised if this guy was just using F2 for everything, because see how he doesn't have an army control group anywhere? I know a lot of people might be sort of disappointed with this guy's macro. Oh, this guy's bad. Well, I mean, these people that I say that I elect to 1v1 are people that I have beef with in 2v2 that I don't think are good. Whether they're talking shit and they're losing, or they're on my team and causing me to lose. The fact of the matter is that whenever I 1v1 these people, they're almost always obnoxious and almost always bad. So it's not like I'm saying, oh yeah, this is like a game where I played Maru and like I won. This is like a TY's off race. No. This is like some mouthy guy on the 2v2 ladder who I didn't think was anything, and sure enough, he's nothing. I mean, games should never end and you have like 7 idle drones come out of a fucking geyser. It wasn't the fact that he does this terrible rallying process as a core macro mechanic that makes him bad, although that is bad and you should never do it like this. It's the fact that he had fucking teen amounts, like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. He had like an entire fucking mineral line's worth of workers on a gas, his main base gas, and he didn't notice. Pathetic. Sub for more.